Yeah, no, I quite. No, I'm sorry, I was at the cinema. Hmm? Wake Up Dead Man. It's the latest Knives Out movie. Except, well, I mean, it's not a Knives Out movie. The first movie was called Knives Out, but the people who make it think we're fucking stupid, and if they don't say it's a Knives Out movie, we won't recognise it's part of that sequence. Yeah, I know. It wasn't necessary with any Agatha Christie. Sorry, wasn't it? You didn't have, Evil Under the Sun. I don't know, Death on the Nile mystery. Mm. Well, it was good. Yeah, I mean, shocking that for some, I think that did it, but I knew that from the very beginning. Just had a feeling. It was kind of obvious, really. Guten Tag, I'm Dr. Macclevoid. It's not my real name. Reverse top, no time to shop. And we're talking today about Wake Up Dead Man, colon, a Knives Out mystery as it's billed in some territories, and indeed by the BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification. Though you won't see that subtitle on the movie's title card, presumably because Rian Johnson thinks it's rather stupid and isn't going to patronise the audience in the same way as the people marketing the film. So, this, in case you don't know, though you do, is the third film in the Benoit Blanc set of Agatha Christie styled murder mysteries of Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson, he's the director you know from The Last Jedi, but the rest of us know from movies like Brick and Looper. Despite being castigated by Star Wars fans the world over for making an extremely interesting Star Wars film that tried to open up the mythology after J.J. Abrams tried to box it in and reduce it to eternal self pastiche. Um, he had the last laugh because ultimately his following movie was Knives Out, which was a huge hit around the world. And presumably Glass Onion, the follow up, would have been a massive box office hit as well. We'll never know because Netflix bought the Knives Out franchise and consigned it to streamer hell with the minor concession that each movie would get a very, very limited theatrical release. Blink and you'll miss it. 1 week at your local independent cinema before it would be consumed the world over. And it was at such a screening that I saw the third film in the series, Wake Up Dead Man. And I'm here to ruin it for you before you can see it yourself on Netflix.
Consider what had actually been seen.
What is there to say about Wake Up Dead Man? Well, this is Rian Johnson's affectionate throwback to the all-star Agatha Christie adaptations of old. You know the sort of thing. Evil Under the Sun with Peter Ustinov, Murder on the Orient Express with Albert Finney, et al. You know, anyone who's anyone of a certain era was in these movies. And there have been attempts to revive the formula, as it were. You know, Kenneth Branagh famously decided to do some Hercule Poirot adaptations of his own, which, despite being fairly well directed and despite having all-star casts, faltered slightly at the box office. There was an attempt very recently by Chris Columbus to do such a movie. The Thursday Murder. And that movie, despite going straight to Netflix, proved how difficult it is to make a successful film like this, because despite being based on a undeservedly well-received novel, the film itself was a bland point-and-click exercise. A movie so utterly redundant and artistically worthless as to be
what the fuck?
Recognisable Netflix content. The good thing about Netflix owning the Knives Out franchise is that they only supply the cash. Fortunately, all the creative decisions remain with Rian Johnson. And Rian Johnson is a proper director. He's a real auteur. He's somebody who is in full command and control of the creative process. He writes his own movies, he directs, of course, and even gets the family involved, has his brother score, etc., etc. But here's the point. He's not a hack. You may not like Rian Johnson. He ruined Star Wars for me. Made a movie that didn't quite meet up to my archetypal expectations and made me think. But that's good outside of Star Wars. The rest of us like that stuff. And here's the thing. These sorts of movies have been done to death. We've had numerous Agatha Christie adaptations, etc., etc. And the thing about Agatha Christie is, much as I love Agatha Christie, I'm a fan of hers, her stories do tend to pivot on plot twists and so on, and how unusual or interesting the murder setup is. They're not about character, okay? Characterization is one-dimensional. They're not psychologically dense mysteries. Rian Johnson, one feels, understands this fairly well. So what does he try to do? There really are only two ways of making that plot, that kind of movie, work in the modern era, because everyone's irritatingly always trying to get ahead of the story, not content to just sit there and enjoy it, are they? It's like, well, actually, I'd worked it out from the very first scene. As soon as I saw blah blah, I knew it was them, etc., etc. How we tire of hearing that shit. So, what do you do? Well, there are two things you can do. One, you could involve makes it harder for the audience to guess, and two, you could make the explanation so complicated that it would be impossible for any ordinary-minded human who didn't have, a lateral Jonathan Creek-like brain to work it out. And Wake Up Dead Man does both of those things. Oops. Spoilers. Now, there's an issue here, okay, which is, if the mystery is so complicated that it can't be worked out by the audience, then it is in danger of looking like a bit of a cheat. The thing about a puzzle is it has to be solvable, right? If it's so ludicrously over the top that it can't be solved, well, think of Evil Under the Sun, for example. It's an incredibly cleverly plotted murder. It's all about producing the sort of classic time delay plot where the murderers contrive to get events in a certain order so that it appears that a crime has taken place at a different time to the time it took place, thereby exonerating them of any involvement. It's also a trope that was much picked up by Columbo's villains and so on. Rian Johnson's also a big fan of Columbo, and he riffs on that on his TV series Poker Face, which is, I think, on Peacock in the United States and stolen by Sky here in the UK. But the thing about Evil Under the Sun was, you could, in theory, work it out if you paid attention to what was going on, and if you knew what to look for, and if you were in that kind of detective frame of mind, bearing in mind what you do see and what you don't see, you might work it out, right? Not, you probably won't, but you might. I'm confident in saying that there is no earthly way, that an ordinary member of the audience is going to be able to work out Wake Up Dead Man's plot before it's explained to you, inevitably, at the death. No pun intended. Because it's so contrived, it's almost impossible to reverse engineer simply. And that's fine. You don't want a whodunit that you can work out in the first act. What would be the point of watching it? But Johnson thinks, hell, it doesn't matter if the plot is ludicrous, as long as the movie is dynamic, full of vibrant, larger-than-life performances, full of zany direction, and there's some good jokes thrown in there for good measure. And indeed, if the central performance from Daniel Craig as Blanc is suitably wry and engaging, and it is. Daniel Craig's much more relaxed in this film than he has been in the last two. Any semblance of James Bond, of the machismo of James Bond, long gone. He's as camp as Christmas in this movie. And much more relaxed, and it has to be said, seemingly enjoying himself a lot more than he was in the first two.
You've let that pair get off scot-free, and I haven't even got my diamond back. Oh, you made a right cock-up-boro.
It's an interesting whodunit. Interesting setting. A church in New York State, a little village with a slightly zany parish. There's lots of interesting themes here about sort of messianic figures and cult leaders and the kind of people that fall behind such people. But above all, what separates it from the other people who are at the moment trying the same thing, from your likes of Chris Columbus or Kenneth Branagh or any of those people, is that Johnson, I think, understands what fundamentally made the big movie adaptations of old Agatha Christie stories work in the first place. Star power, though there is a bit less of it here than there was in the first two Knives Out movies, but there's still some hefty figures in here. There's still, Andrew Scott, Glenn Close, Thomas Hayden Church, though I'll be brutally honest, I didn't recognise him until he was credited at the end. The cast is decent, so you need star power, but you also need that sort of heightened reality, that larger-than-life, slightly macabre setup that is memorable and sticks in the mind, and people will, I think, forever remember this as the creepy mystery, the church one, the parish one, the one with the strange messianic priest. It's got those archetypal elements which are very well realised and very vivid and will stick in the mind. You may forget what happened and why, but you won't forget the imagery, and that's because Rian Johnson is a good director and he knows how to put a movie together and he knows how to create memorable sequences and so on. Now, the big question, of course, therefore, is if you have made a movie which is very cinematic and has got a great cast and so on, why would you waste it on streaming? And that is something that Netflix will need to explain in due course. When they, after the purchase of Warner Brothers, are taken to the Film Crimes Court in The Hague, and the prosecution opens, they will ask them, why did you steal the opportunity from audiences of seeing these Knives Out sequels in cinemas? Because not everybody has a Netflix subscription. Not everybody wants one. Why, as it's all pure cream, as you can only make money, why not distribute this movie for, say, 45 days in cinemas, make some real cash, and then put it on your streaming service? Why put it on your streaming service directly after a token release and make no money whatsoever? What's the answer? I don't know the answer, because I'm not some clever Netflix executive. But it seems to me degenerate and senseless. A movie like Wake Up Dead Man should be seen in the cinema. It was made for the cinema. It wasn't made for your iPhone. It will be wasted on your iPhone, though I suspect that's where the vast majority of people will see it, probably on their morning commute or something. And that's a shame. And if I were Rian Johnson, Daniel Craig, and all the rest of them, I might be a little embittered by that, even as I was counting my Netflix cash. It just feels wrong. You know, not murdering somebody wrong, but wrong. So yes, I recommend it to you for what it's worth. I would see it. I'd stream it with your friends and talk over it, as Rian Johnson didn't intend for you to do. Well, that's it, and go!
Oh dear. Now we'll never know who did it.